Hi, I'm Donna from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I am going to do a video for you today on how to make a beginner Pysanka egg. Pysanka eggs are intricately designed Ukrainian Easter eggs that are very old and traditional, made in the Ukraine and other Slavic countries. Pysanky is the art of the writing of eggs, and that's what we call it, is writing. And a pysanka is singular. Pysanky is plural and kind of envelops the whole thing, and pysanka is singular, and that is one egg. I'm going to talk about various things that you need, and I'm going to go through making a basic egg. Most of the time, the camera is just going to be focused on my work that I'm doing, but if you are interested in getting started in this, there are lots of books that can help you. There's tons of materials. There are groups on Facebook that I recommend that people join. They're very helpful. The whole egg community is very giving and sharing of the craft and of helping people get started and excelling. There's even a weekly Zoom call that I join that everybody shares their ideas. The egg that we're going to make today is going to be a basic star egg, and this is a good way that most people get started, is with just a big egg that doesn't take very long to do, that just kind of gets them into the principles of doing this. If you ever, when you were a kid and you dyed an egg in the Pa's Easter egg dye kits, sometimes a crayon came with that, and you would write your name or draw a line or something on an egg. And then when you would dye the egg, the part where your wax was, where you had drawn it with your crayon, wouldn't take the wax. And that is the principle of this, only in a much more intricate style. Where you're putting the wax, your dye is not going to take. And instead of just doing it once, you do it over and over and over again over top of each color of dye. So here's the basic principle of what we're going to be doing. This is the first step. The first step is you divide your egg with pencil to give you guidelines for your design. The second step is, once you've got your guidelines, then you start drawing your design, still in pencil. Then you cover certain parts of your design with wax. And to do that, you use a tool called a kistka. This is a little pen, sort of, that has a brass funnel on the end of it. And you heat it in a candle flame, put wax in it, and then draw on the egg with it. And then you have to keep repeating that process. Heat it, put wax in it, draw on the egg, and that will keep the wax flowing nicely. There is a learning curve to this. A lot of people get glops of unwanted wax. A lot of people can't get the kistka to flow properly, and that's all a learning curve, and it's recommended to start on cardboard or paper or a practice eggshell until you get the hang and the feel of using this tool. If you want to jump right in and just do it on your first egg, that's fine too. Just realize that you might have some mistakes, and there are ways to clean up mistakes, but it's best to avoid them if you can. This next step, after you've drawn on your egg, in the first step, everything that you cover with wax at this step will remain white. So you take your plain white egg, you draw on it, and then you dip it in yellow dye. After it comes out of the yellow dye, you add some more to your design, and you cover everything that you want to remain yellow. Following that, here you add some green by hand. There are dye progressions in Pysanky that are traditional. You can go yellow, orange, red, maybe purple, black. And if you want to go green, that doesn't really fit anywhere in the whole spectrum of those colors. Once you go green, you can't really go over it again with anything else except maybe black. So if you want to just add little spots of green, like this practice egg that we're going to be doing, you often apply it by hand, either using a paintbrush, a Q-tip, or a micro applicator or some other tool. And we'll be doing that, and I'll show you. So once you've got your green, then you cover that with wax. Then the next step is to go ahead and add a little bit more that's going to remain yellow in the final design. So you take your kistka and cover whatever you want to be yellow. Next, you dip it in orange dye. So when you bring it out of the orange dye, now you cover up a little bit more so that everything that you're covering now is going to remain orange in the final design. Keep in mind, you've already got your wax for your white. You've already got your wax for your green. You've already got your wax for the yellow. Now you're putting wax over orange. All those other colors still exist underneath of the wax that you've already put on the egg. After you're done covering everything that you want to remain orange, put it in the red. Now the red is sometimes not that different from orange, so you have to be careful to make sure that there's enough difference in color shades that you're going to be able to tell that you've got orange and red. So just keep your mind on that when you're doing it. Still, as an advanced person, I have trouble sometimes with two blues that I use that look too similar to one another, and you can't even tell that there are two blues. So if you want to really have that juxtaposition between your colors and have them both stand out as individual colors, just keep in mind, you either have to have a lighter orange or a darker red. You really need to have a differentiation there. So now we cover everything in red, or in wax on the red that we want to remain red in the final design. When we're finished with that, now we dip it in black. And this is not the color progression for every egg. That's just this egg. Every egg is different. And this is a traditional color progression. And I recommend that at each step, you double check yourself. Once again, even as an advanced person, I'll do an egg, I'll get it out of the yellow dye, and I'll go, darn, there was more that was supposed to be yellow. I missed one star point. I missed one dot. So always double check yourself. Make sure that you have covered everything that you want covered before you move on to the next step. Then finally, after you've done that final step, now you're going to take all the wax off and melt it off with there's a variety of ways to melt it off. You can use a candle, which is the traditional way. You can use a heat dryer, a heat gun, which is another tool that is used, and that's the one that I happen to use. It is this right here. Looks like a blow dryer, but it really isn't. It has it has more heat and less air, so it doesn't actually blow as much as it heats. And then you can also put them in the oven. You can work on full eggs or you can work on empty eggs. If you work on full eggs, they're going to drop down in your dye and be easier to dye. But then you have to take the risk of emptying them out after they're finished. And if you break it, you may be a little disappointed or a lot disappointed. If you work on empty eggs, it's harder to dye them because they're going to float in the dye. So now you have to plug up the hole so it doesn't get dye in it, or you're going to have to weight it down with something. Well, and you're going to have to weight it down with something. So first you have to plug the hole up, and you can use wax for that, or there are these little little plugs that you can use. Here we go. Here's one that's open. It's just a little silicone plug that you can put in the hole in an egg, and that will keep the dye from getting inside of it, but you do have to weight it down into the dye. So with all of that said, and that's a long introduction, I realize, I'm going to go ahead and we will get started. I am going to do these videos in pieces and parts so that we can stop and start them. You can watch them in segments, and we'll do each step as a different segment. So thank you for watching to this point, and hopefully that's a good introduction. And next we will get right on to doing the egg.